Okay, you guys, we are back reading Black Beauty by Anna Sewell here at the Caribou Public Library for our chapter book story time today. We're going to be reading chapters 45 and 46. So I'm Miss Erin. Thanks for joining us. Let's find out what happens to Black Beauty today. Jerry's New Year is what it's called. Here is the picture that we're starting with. It is winter time, huh? Christmas and the New Year are very merry times for some people, but for cabmen and cab horses it is no holiday, though it may be a harvest. There are so many parties and balls and places of amusement open that the work is hard and often late. Sometimes driver and horse have to wait for hours in the rain or frost, shivering with cold, while the merry people within are dancing away to the music. I wonder if the beautiful ladies ever think of the weary cabman waiting on his box, and his patient beast standing until his legs get stiff with cold. I had now most of the evening work, as I was well accustomed to standing, and Jerry was also more afraid of Hotspur than taking cold. We had a great deal of late work in the Christmas week, and Jerry's cough was bad, but however late we were, Polly sat up for him and came out with the lantern to meet him, looking anxious and troubled. On the evening of the New Year, we had to take two gentlemen to a house in one of the West End squares. We set them down at 9 o'clock, and were told to come again at 11. But, said one of them, as it is a card party, you may have to wait a few minutes, but don't be late. As the clock struck 11, we were at the door, for Jerry was always punctual. The clock chimed the quarters, 1, 2, 3, and then struck 12, but the door did not open. The wind had been very changeable, with squalls of rain during the day, but now it came on sharp, driving sleet, which seemed to come all the way round. It was very cold, and there was no shelter. Jerry got off his box and came and pulled one of my cloths a little more over my neck. Then he took a turn or two up and down, stamping his feet. Then he began to beat his arms, but that sent him off coughing. So he opened the cab door and sat at the bottom with his feet on the pavement, and was a little sheltered. Still, the clock chimed the quarters, and no one came. At 12:30, he rang the bell and asked the servant if he would be wanted that night. "Oh, yes, you'll be wanted, safe enough," said the man. "You must not go, it will soon be over." And again Jerry sat down. But his voice was so hoarse I could hardly hear him. At 1:15, the door opened, and the two gentlemen came out. They got into the cab without a word, and told Jerry where to drive. That was nearly 2 miles. My legs were numb with cold, and I thought I should have stumbled. When the men got out, they never said that they were sorry to have kept us waiting so long, but they were angry at the charge. However, as Jerry never charged more than was his due, so he never took less, and they had to pay for the 2 hours and a quarter waiting. But it was hard-earned money to Jerry. At last we got home, but could hardly speak, and his cough was dreadful. Polly asked no questions, but opened the door and held the lantern for him. "Can't I do something?" she said. "Yes, get Jack something warm, and then boil me some gruel." This was said in a hoarse whisper. He could hardly get his breath, but he gave me a rub-down as usual, and even went up into the hayloft for an extra bundle of straw for my bed. Polly brought me a warm mash that made me comfortable, and then they locked the door. It was late the next morning before anyone came, and then it was only Harry. He cleaned us and fed us and swept out the stalls, and then he put the straw back again as if it was Sunday. He was very still, and neither whistled nor sang. At noon he came again and gave us our food and water. This time Dolly came with him. She was crying, and I could gather from what they were saying that Jerry was dangerously ill, and the doctor said that it was a bad case. So 2 days passed, and there was great trouble indoors. We only saw Harry, and sometimes Dolly. I think she came for company, for Polly was always with Jerry, and he had to be kept very quiet. On the 3rd day, while Harry was in the stable, a tap came at the door, and Governor Grant came in. "I wouldn't go to the house, my boy," he said, "but I want to know how your father is." "He's very bad," said Harry. "He can't be much worse. They call it bronchitis. The doctor thinks that it will turn one way or another tonight." "That's bad, very bad," said Grant, shaking his head. "I know 2 men who died of that last week. It takes him off in no time. But while there's life, there's hope, so you must keep up your spirits." "Yes," said Harry quickly, "and the doctor said that Father had a better chance than most men because he didn't drink. He said yesterday the fever was so high that if Father had been a drinking man, it would have burned him up like a piece of paper. But I believe he thinks he will get over it. Don't you think he will, Mr. Grant?" The governor looked puzzled. "If there's any rule that good men should get over these things, I'm sure he will, my boy. He's the best man I know. I'll look in early tomorrow." Early next morning, he was there. "Well," he said. "Father is better," said Harry. "Mother hopes he will get over it." "Oh, thank God," said Governor. "And now you must keep him warm. Keep his mind easy, and that brings me to the horses. You see, Jack will be all the better for the rest of a week or two in a warm stable, and you can easily take him a turn up and down the street to stretch his legs. But this young one, if he does not get to work, he will soon be all up on one end, as you may say, and will be rather too much for you. When he does go out, there'll be an accident." "It is like that now," said Harry. "I've kept him short of corn, but he's so full of spirit, I don't know what to do with him." "Just so," said Grant. "Now look here. Will you tell your mother that if she is agreeable, I will come for him every day until something is arranged. Take him for a good spell of work, and whatever he earns, I'll bring your mother half of it, and that will help with the horses' feed. Your father is in a good club, I know, but that won't keep the horses, and they'll be eating their heads off all this time. I'll come at noon and hear what she says." And without waiting for Harry's thanks, he was gone. At noon, I think he went and saw Polly, for he and Harry came to the stable together, harnessed Hotspur, and took him out. For a week or more he came for Hotspur, and when Harry thanked him or said anything about his kindness, he laughed it off, saying it was all good luck for him, for his horses were wanting a little rest, which they would not otherwise have had. Jerry grew better steadily, but the doctor said that he must never go to the cab work again if he wished to be an old man. The children had many consultations together about what father and mother would do, and how they could help earn money. One afternoon, Hotspur was brought in very wet and dirty. "The streets are nothing but slush," said the governor. "It will give you a good warming, my boy, to get him clean and dry." "All right, Governor," said Harry. "I shall not leave him till he is. You know I have been trained by my father." "I wish all the boys had been trained like you," said the governor. While Harry was sponging off the mud from Hotspur's body and legs, Dolly came in, looking very full of something. "Who lives at Fairstowe, Harry? Mother has got a letter from Fairstowe. She seemed so glad and ran upstairs to father with it." "Don't you know? Why, it's the name of Mrs. Fowler's place, Mother's old mistress, you know, the lady that Father met last summer, who sent you and me 5 shillings each." Here are the kids talking while he takes care of Hotspur's mud and legs. "Oh, Mrs. Fowler! Of course I know all about her. I wonder what she's writing to Mother about." "Mother wrote to her last week," said Harry. "You know, she told Father that if he gave up the cab work, that she would like to know. I wonder what she says. Run in and see, Dolly." Harry scrubbed away at Hotspur with a whoosh, whoosh, like any old hostler. In a few minutes, Dolly came dancing into the stable. "Oh, Harry, there never was anything so beautiful. Mrs. Fowler says we are all to go and live near her. There's a cottage now empty that will just suit us, with a garden and a hen house and apple trees and everything, and her coachman is going away in the spring. And then she will want Father in his place. And there are good families around where you can get a place in the garden and a stable, or as a page boy. And there's a good school for me, and Mother is laughing and crying by turns, and Father does look so happy." "That's uncommon jolly," said Harry. "Just the right thing, I should say. It will suit Father and Mother both. But I don't intend to be a page boy with tight clothes and rows of buttons. I'll be a groom or a gardener." It was quickly settled that as soon as Jerry was well enough, they should remove to the country, and that the cab and the horses should be sold as soon as possible. This was heavy news for me, for I was not young now, and could not look for any improvement in my condition. Since I left Birtwick, I had never been so happy as with my dear master Jerry, but 3 years of cab work, even under the best conditions, will tell on one's strength, and I felt I was not the horse that I had been. Grant said at once that he would take Hotspur, and there were men on the stand who would have bought me, but Jerry said that I should not go to a cab work again with just anybody, and the governor promised to find a place for me where I should be comfortable. The day came for going away. Jerry had not been allowed to go out yet, and I never saw him after that New Year's Eve. Polly and the children came to bid me goodbye. Poor old Jack, dear old Jack, I wish we could take you with us, she said. And then, laying her hand on my mane, she put her face close to my neck and kissed me. Dolly was crying and kissed me too. Harry stroked me a great deal, but said nothing. Only he seemed very sad. And so I was led away to my new place. Now we have the next part 4, just about finished. So chapter 46 is called Jakes and the Lady. I was sold to a corn dealer and baker whom Jerry knew, and with him he thought that I should have good food and fair work. In the first, he was quite right, if my master had always been on the premises, and I do not think I should have been overloaded. But there was a foreman who was always hurrying and driving everyone, and frequently, when I had quite a full load, he would order something else to be taken on. My carter, whose name was Jakes, often said that it was more than I ought to take, but the others always overruled him. 'Twas no use going twice when once would do, and he chose to get business forward. Jakes, like the other carters, always had a bearing rein up, which prevented me from drawing easily, and by the time I had been there 4 months, I found the work telling very much on my strength. One day I was loaded up more than usual, and part of the road was up a steep hill. I used all my strength, but I could not get on, and was obliged continually to stop. This did not please my driver, and he laid his whip on badly. "Get on, you lazy fellow," he said, "or I'll make you." Again I started the heavy load and struggled on a few yards. Again the whip came down, and again I struggled forward. The pain of that great whip was sharp, but my mind was hurt quite as much as my poor sides. To be punished and abused when I was doing my very best was so hard, it took the heart out of me. A third time he was flogging me cruelly when a lady stepped up quickly to him and said in a sweet, earnest voice, "Oh, pray do not whip your good horse any more." Here's a picture of the woman and Black Beauty trying to get up the hill. "I'm sure he's doing all he can, and the road is very steep. I'm sure he's doing his best." "If doing his best won't get this load up, he must do something more than his best. That's all I know, ma'am," said Jakes. "But is it not a very heavy load?" she said. Yes, too heavy," he said. "But that's not my fault. The foreman came just as we were starting, and would have 300 weight more put on to save him trouble. I must get on with it as well as I can." He was raising the whip again when the lady said, "Pray stop. I think I can help you if you will let me." The man laughed. "You see," she said, "you do not give him a fair chance. He cannot use all his power with his head, held back as it is with that bearing rein. If you would take it off, I'm sure he would do better. Do try it," she said persuasively. "I should be very glad if you would." Well, said Jakes with a short laugh. "Anything to please a lady, of course. How far would you wish it down, ma'am?" "Quite down. Give him his head altogether." The rein was taken off, and in a moment I put my head down to my very knees. Oh, what a comfort it was! Then I tossed it up and down several times to get the achy stiffness out of my neck. "Poor fellow, that is what you wanted," said she, patting and stroking me with her gentle hand. "And now, if you will speak kindly to him and lead him on, I believe he will be able to do better." Jakes took the rein. "Come on, Blackie." I put down my head and threw my whole weight against the collar. I spared no strength, and the load moved on, and I pulled it steadily up the hill, and then stopped to take a breath. The lady had walked along the footpath, and now came across into the road. She stroked and patted my neck, as I had not been patted for many a long day. "You see, he was quite willing when you gave him the chance. I'm sure he is a fine-tempered creature, and I dare say he has known better days. You won't put that rein on again, will you?" For he was just going to hitch it up on the old plan. Well, ma'am, I can't deny that having his head has helped him up the hill, and I'll remember it another time. And thank you, ma'am. But if he went without a bearing rein, I should be the laughing stock of all the carters. It is the fashion, you see. Is it not better, she said, to lead a good fashion than to follow a bad one? A great many gentlemen do not use bearing reins now. Our carriage horses have not worn them for 15 years, and work with much less fatigue than those who have them. Besides, she added in a very serious tone, we have no right to distress any of God's creatures without a very good reason. We call them dumb animals, and so they are, but they cannot tell us how they feel, but they do not suffer less because they have no words. I must not detain you now. I thank you for trying my plan with your good horse, and I am sure that you will find it far better than the whip. Good day. And with another soft pat on my neck, she stepped lightly across the path, and I saw her no more. That was a real lady, I'll be bound for it, said Jakes to himself. She spoke just as polite as if I was a gentleman, and I'll try her plan uphill, at any rate. I must do him the justice to say that he let my rein out several holes, and going uphill after that, he always gave me my head, but the heavy loads went on. Good feed and fair rest will keep one's strength under full work, but no horse can stand against overloading. I was getting so thoroughly pulled down from this cause that a younger horse was brought in my place. I may as well mention here that what I suffered at this time from another cause. I had heard horses speak of it, but had never myself had experience of the evil. This was a badly lighted stable. There was only one very small window at the end, and the consequence was that the stalls were almost dark. Besides the depressing effect this had on my spirits, it was very much weakening my sight, and when I was suddenly brought out of the darkness into the glare of daylight, it was very painful to my eyes. Several times I stumbled over the threshold, and could scarcely see where I was going. I believe, had I stayed there very long, that I should have become purblind, and that would have been a great misfortune, for I have already heard men say that a stone-blind horse was safer to drive than one which had imperfect sight, as it generally makes them very timid. However, I escaped without any permanent injury to my sight, and was sold to a large cab owner. Well, that is it for the rest of today. You all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Until then.